The maintain volume constraint is pretty much going to do what it says on the box. It's going to try and maintain the volume of our bone when we scale it. Now, this is one where you probably think you'll be using quite a lot of the maintain volume constraints with squash and stretch all over your rig, but honestly, you probably won't use this all that often. You'll use the stretch to constraint, which has a lot of the maintain volume functionality built into it. But nonetheless, let's explain this one over here. So I've gone ahead and added it. We have 3 different types of mode: strict, uniform, and single axis. I'll go over those ones in a moment. Then we have our 3 axes. I'll demonstrate with the y-axis, which is the length of the bone here. And then we have our space. And for this demo, it's going to be easier if I change over to local space, because that's going to match up with the axes of our bone here. So let me just demonstrate squashing and stretching this one. So when we scale our bone there, the y-axis is actually going to stretch along that. And the other 2 axes are going to squash and stretch to maintain the volume that we tell it to. So our mode up here is going to affect when it does its squash and its stretch. So we have 2 ways of operating. We can scale the whole entire thing, or we could scale the channels individually. Now, when we have the strict mode on, it's not going to care whether you do an individual channel or all of the channels. It's going to be strictly on all the time. So I'll scale the X, it's going to squash. Scale the Z, it's going to squash. Scale the Y, it's going to squash. Scale them all together, it's going to squash and stretch. When we choose our uniform option, it will only maintain the volume when the y-axis is scaled, either individually or when you do them all together. It's not going to have an effect when we scale the X and the Z by themselves, but it will when we scale them all together, including the Y or the Y solo. And then finally, we have the single axis mode, and this is only going to take an effect when that single axis is scaled. So if I grab it by itself, it's going to squash and stretch. However, if I grab all of them, it's not going to have an effect. It's only going to do it when we scale the single axis. And this volume setting here is how much volume the bone has when it's at rest. So if I pump this up to 2, you'll see that it is now bigger. And if I drop it down, it's actually smaller. So that's what that one does there. I dare say you probably won't use that one. You'll just have it on the default 1.0. And that's our maintain volume constraint.